Please. With regard to attendance, we have all trustees present and Trustee Nelson is joining electronically. And I would like to point out that I sent trustees an email this afternoon about attendance and requesting permission to be absent or connecting electronically. So if you please have a look at that. That's the new Regulation 98. I need a motion for approval of the agenda. Trustee Buckler, Trustee Cook, all those in support? That's carried. Thank you. And now we're going to convene to private session, and the standing committee meetings will convene at 7 o'clock. Thank you. No, motion to convene to private session. Trustee McKinley, Trustee Leclerc. All those in support? That's carried. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Education Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order and going to do the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on land and surrounded by water, originally inhabited by Indigenous peoples who have traveled the area since time immemorial. The territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenni, Lenape, and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we'd like to acknowledge the presence of the Huron-Wendat peoples and the Three Fires Confederacy, Ojibwe, Odawa, Potawatomi. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. Thank you. Attendance. I believe most of the trustees are sitting here in person with the exception of Trustee Nelson. I believe she is on the phone. And approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Trustee Leclerc, second by Trustee Sipcar. Any questions regarding the agenda? Seeing none, all in support? Thank you. Declaration of conflict of interest. Oh, if you'd like to know, I'm hearing speakers list. We do have 3 people on the speakers list. Okay.
That's what we just approved.
Yeah. Approval of the minutes. That's Trustee Leclerc, Trustee Hatfield. Any questions on the minutes? Seeing none, all in support? Any opposed? Thank you, that carries. And business arising from the minutes? Is there any business arising? Seeing none, we'll move on. We have 2 presentations. And the first one is G1, will be presented by Superintendent Howitt on National Day of Truth and Reconciliation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to be here this evening and to speak about the work that we've been doing in the area of the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation in our board. It's really interesting that the inaugural day was just 3 years ago. And of course, the day honors the lost children and survivors of residential schools and their families and their communities. So it's a day of reverence and reflection about the critical impact of what this has had in our country and for Indigenous people. But with the learning that's happened in schools the last 3 years, although it's a day of reverence and respect in memory of the many lives lost, it's also a day that demonstrates through the learning has become evident to students the incredible resiliency of Indigenous people, which is wonderful to see happening in our schools. So this year, principals, when we met with them in August, we talked about, preparation for September and the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And we asked them to develop a plan for their school and to work with their teachers, because people are in earnest to do good work, engage in learning, and to model for our students, because the truth in those calls to action are going to only come through education. And what they've done is they have then been asked to upload how they've commemorated the day on a Padlet. And it doesn't work in here, but if you were to go on the Padlet, you would see streams of pictures from last week into the Day of National Truth and Reconciliation of the work that's happening in schools with students and educators. And we also had the flag raising at all of our schools. We have flags. All of our board sites, we had the flags raised on September 23rd. And I'm just going to play a little video of Megaze. Each time I see him, I remember him as just a little boy. Yeah, and now he is in at Riverside as a secondary school. So you're just going to hear from him. He's going to play his drum. It's going to take a couple minutes.
Hello guys, my name is Megaze, as most of you guys know so far. I am Turtle Clan, and I am from Triple Tugs First Nation. Mishkiki K is my spirit name. It means maker of medicine. I am a grade 9 student, as most of you know. I'm a great grandchild of a residential school survivor. I stand here today about to raise the Every Child Matters flag. I'm here for all of those children who didn't make it out of those diabolical schools. And an estimated around 550 schools across North America, and just in Canada, an estimate of more than 6,000 children died. I believe it is way more than that, like 1 million. I honor them by learning my language, by singing, and by drumming. I do this because they couldn't do it. Canada is moving closer to truth and reconciliation. One way is by speaking the land acknowledgement in schools and even on my hockey team. My hope is that they're not just reading it. I hope they read it and they truly understand it. Last year in my grade 8 class, my teacher shared almost no information on the FNMI lessons that Tina worked so hard on and sent emails where they could access information. I know all teachers aren't like that. All FNMI kids would like to learn more and see their culture rise and see it more taught in their classrooms. I hope in the near future we can have that truth and reconciliation for all the children who passed that couldn't see it. The more we move closer to it, the more I think of those kids who didn't get to see their families again. You know what the most hurtful thing is? Those parents didn't even know they lost their child to residential schools. They never even went home again. Thinking of the things my grandparents went through and suffered through is absolutely heartbreaking. And that is why I stand here with all of you today, hoping soon that we can have that truth and reconciliation. And I would like to share a song this year. go show Meshe Bemode ya ya ya. Hey oh hey, hey oh hey, hey oh hey ya ya go hey oh hey ya hey oh. Hey oh hey, hey oh hey, hey oh hey ya go hey oh hey ya oh. Thank you guys so much. Be blessed.
Megazay did a great job, and we had two other students, secondary students, speak, a member of the Open Minds team and our director, and it was a lovely flag raising here as well as all sites across the system. Oh, sorry. We also send early in September digital resources out to educators to help them in preparing for the week before the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And all those materials are vetted and supported through FMNI EAO, which is the Education Association of Ontario. And they're focused on the educator as a learner and keeping the student at the center and knowing the students and making connections to understanding the impacts of colonialism and centering on Indigenous voices and the varying narratives and balancing them between resistance and resilience. And again, supported by FMNI EAO, all vetted and provided to educators. And as well, in that package of digital resources, they have professional learning materials, which include lesson plans at all ages and grade levels for different days of the weeks, mentor texts, and samples of announcements and videos that can be used in the learning. And then we also offer virtual sessions through the National Center of Truth and Reconciliation. So we have people, local people and people through connections across the country, but local people include people like Moses Ludnam, Geronimo Henry, who is a residential school survivor, Monica, who is an Inuit elder, all again provided by the National Center of Truth and Reconciliation so they can have live conversations with Indigenous people. And different groups, schools felt connected to join various honor walks, and so we guided students to their community accordingly. There were people who joined the walk at Caldwell and people that joined the walk in Tecumseh as well, the town of Tecumseh. And if you'll recall the investment of the t-shirts, virtually everybody was wearing an orange shirt yesterday. We sell them, and any of the proceeds go to support our Every Child Matters scholarship. The first year we honored 2 students, the second year we honored another 2 students, and last year we honored 8 students with a $1,000 scholarship each in support of their pathway. So that's just a little bit of information about what we did for the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And if there's no questions, I'll pass it to my colleague.
No questions? Okay. Next presentation is with Superintendent Roberts on the EQAO. Take it away.
I think I had that issue last year when I presented the same topic. So good evening, and before I begin the presentation, I want to take a moment to thank teacher consultant Dr. Cara Delicata and a team of teacher consultants in offering their support for their quick response following the release of the EQAO data last Thursday, and for their steadfast efforts to dig deeper into the data being presented to you this evening. So I'm pleased to present you with many highlights related to the 23-24 administration of the EQAO elementary and secondary provincial assessments. The data from EQAO assessments act as a glimpse that reveals whether students are meeting curriculum expectations in reading, writing, and mathematics at key stages in their education. At first glance, when we dive into the latest EQAO data about student achievement and perceptions to get insights on student learning at the provincial level, we acknowledge that we will continue to do the hard work to increase the number of students achieving provincial standards. And we have some celebrations this year. Our scores increased in junior math by 2%. Our scores also increased on the OSSLT first-time eligible students by 1%. Our scores are 1% above the provincial average in grade 6 mathematics. And we are proud that we met the 2023-24 board goal of increasing grade 6 math from 49% to 51%. I will continue to share some more celebrations throughout the presentation. As you look at the contextual data on the screen on student participation, the remainder of students may have been exempt for reasons to maintain equity for all students. For example, they may have been on a step 1, step 2 of the English language acquisition. They may have also been a GAIN student. All stakeholders would be part of a decision making for these exemptions, and the decision whether to exempt a student or not must be made prior to the assessment for each student individually in consultation with the student's parents, guardians, and with appropriate teaching staff as well as administration. As what we gathered from the achievement results in grade 3 is that this year in writing we are at the same provincial average, and in reading and math we are almost at the provincial average. Now there is tremendous amount of investment from the Ministry of Education in response to the recommendations on the Ontario Human Rights Right to Read report. As you are aware, we've made many efforts, deep efforts over the past few years on the science of reading. And this year, we've begun the work to focus on early screening of all students using common, standardized, evidence-based screening assessments twice a year with our senior kindergarten through grade 2 students. These efforts will help us to identify students at risk for reading difficulties, for immediate, early, tiered interventions, so our students are on track for reading proficiency. I also want to bring to your attention that the ministry released the new language curriculum 1 year ago in September 2023, which also came from a recommendation from the Right to Read report. And the language curriculum focuses on the scientific research on how children learn to read and the most effective ways to teach our students reading. So we are proud that over the past 3 years, trending data in reading has increased in grade 3 by 3%. We are also proud that over the past 3 years, trending data in writing has continued to increase in grade 3, 7%. And over the past 3 years, trending data in math has increased in grade 3, 7%. What we captured from the achievement results in grade 6 is that our math scores are 1% above the provincial average in grade 6, and that we are just below the provincial average in reading and writing. And as I alluded to earlier, we are pleased to see many positive outcomes when we dig into the specific school data. So several of our elementary math priority schools saw a large increase in their math scores this year. For example, Coronation increased 18% in grade 3 and 23% in grade 6. General Brock increased 41% in grade 3 and 16% in grade 6. Princess Elizabeth increased 28% in grade 3 and 6% in grade 6. And Queen Elizabeth increased 20% in grade 6 mathematics, are just a few of the highlights when we're looking at direct school data. The Ministry of Education also continues to invest in mathematics through the Math Achievement Action Plan. We have a team of 6 math facilitators, 5 at the elementary level and 1 at the secondary level to support our students. And our efforts in student achievement in math will reflect the priority actions, ensuring the fidelity of the curriculum implementation and intentional use of proven strategies that support our academic math achievement, ensuring that we continue to engage in ongoing math content knowledge for teaching, and a focus on ensuring we know our mathematic learners. So we are also proud, over the past 3 years in trending data in reading, we've increased 1%. We are proud that also over the past 3 years, trending data in writing has remained the same. And over the past 3 years, trending data in math has increased 10%. So on the chart, you can see that in 2019 through 2021 is highlighted in blue, as EQAO was not administered due to the pandemic. Now, this resulted in multiple interruptions in learning over the course of those 2 years. And as a gentle reminder, student learning was also interrupted in 21-22 following the holiday break. Now I'm going to guide your eyes to the bottom row. Those are the grades of students that completed the 23-24 EQAO assessments. As your eyes move up each row, you can see which grade the students that completed the 23-24 EQAO assessments were in that particular year. And the reason why I'm sharing this chart is to demonstrate the following. If you look at the second column, and I know it's difficult to see, but if you're looking at the second column where it lists, it's titled Primary Writers. In 2023-24, students who wrote the grade 3 assessment were in junior kindergarten in 2019-20. That's the first year of the pandemic, followed by continuous learning interruptions in senior kindergarten and in grade 1. Now looking at the third column titled Junior Writers, our students who wrote the grade 6 assessment were in grade 2 and in grade 3 during the pandemic and did not write EQAO. 2023-24 was the first time they wrote an EQAO assessment. In the column titled Grade 9 Math Writers, students who wrote the grade 9 assessment, they were in grade 5 and grade 6 during the pandemic, and they did not write the EQAO assessment. And in the last column, the OSSLT writers, those students who wrote grade 10 assessment in 23-24 were in grade 6 and 7 during the pandemic, and also did not write the junior EQAO assessments and had also learning interruptions. On the following slide, we have the achievement results in grade 9 mathematics. A reminder that in 21-22, the ministry introduced the math program for grade 9 being de-streamed, meaning that the results were no longer reported separately for academic and applied. And as we dig deeper into the data, we celebrate that 2 out of the 3 secondary math priority schools increased their scores. Kennedy Collegiate increased 7%, and Westview Freedom Academy increased 3% in students meeting the provincial standard. On our final slide, the results for the 23-24 OSSLT success rate for first-time eligible students. Our scores have increased slightly since last year, and the results indicated that 80% of our students, 80% of our first-time eligible students who wrote the literacy test were successful on their first attempt. That's an increase of 1% since last year. And just to highlight, we are proud that over the past 3 years, the trending data in OSSLT results has increased 3%. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Trustee Sipkar?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the presentation and for breaking down the different grades and averages. I'm just curious if we take a step back and are reminded about the provincial push on assessments. I'm trying to remember the exact bill that was passed. I'm kind of looking at Director Houston for that, but I'm curious how the EQAO results fit into that. I know that the province is going to be looking at boards in terms of their assessment. Am I off base with that?
So are you referring to diagnostics versus screeners?
I think so, yes.
Okay, so we do have the screener for the, which came out of the Right to Read report, started this year. We are just onboarding all of our schools in that work. So there is we are screening all of our SK through grade 2 students twice a year. Parents will be aware of their child's results come the fall, and it will be also included on the report card for the first term.
So I guess my question is, how do the EQAO results kind of relate to that? Because they are, I know that that's an earlier age group, but are you able to identify patterns at that kind of age group that would then maybe make its way into the EQAO results? Or you're not sure yet because you haven't made it that far?
Thank you. So when I think about it was a directive from a recommendation from the Ontario Human Rights report, Right to Read report. And from there, we will be able to capture data of students who require interventions at an earlier age. Thus, hopefully, the goal is to close the gap sooner so that our students can meet the provincial average for the diagnostic testing. Now, understandably, that is a snapshot, and that screener will then identify the areas of need for those students so that we can work towards closing those gaps in reading. In addition to that,
And I'll just add to that, so we won't see until the students who are being screened this year, so the grade 2s right in grade 3 next year, then the grade 1s in 2 years, have we closed that gap based on the information we got from the screener? Has it improved in terms of their grade 3 assessment?
so the plan right now, just to add to that, it is a 2-year commitment that the ministry has provided to funding for us. So our SKs will be definitely, obviously, impacted by that, and our grade 1s, and then our current grade 1s into grade 2. Our grade 2s will only receive the screening this year.
So as a supplemental to that, so knowing that it hasn't kind of fully worked its way into like our current results right now, were these results as expected then? Knowing our students and knowing that we didn't have a screener or any sort of direct kind of goal for interventions or anything like that.
So we have had, thankfully, over the past few years, we've focused on the science of reading, which helped guide us to what screener selection we chose moving forward. And last year we did have a pilot of about 1,200 students who participated in a screening process throughout the year to help develop a plan for this year. To say, do we anticipate these results? I think I highlighted the fact that we are proud that since 21-22, following the pandemic, the trends have increased in all but one area.
any other questions? Trustee Burgess.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm wondering how the effect of de-streaming in grade 9 has affected anything that is being assessed. So that would be, well, it's too soon for OSSLT, I suppose, but math.
So math
grade 10
de-streaming,
math.
I believe math de-streaming began in 2020-21. English was in 22-23, so this would have been their first year of a de-streamed new curriculum that the ministry released. So to say teachers were learning the curriculum as it was released throughout the year. To say there was a great deep impact, I don't think we could speak to that. We need some time to further dig into the curriculum. And I think we just need, with math, I'm certainly happy to go back to the team to discuss the.
If I could, I asked because I know it was very controversial at the time. There's a lot of apprehension for kids who would have preferred to take applied math versus academic math. So I'm wondering if there's been a different success, a different, our approaches, our teaching, our support, whatever, the resources, what we have, if it's made any difference in the assessments. Grade 10 math, it's grade 10 math, isn't it?
Grade 9 is
grade 9 is the assessment.
Yeah, grade 10 is the OSSLT, the
Sorry,
literacy test.
I got it right. Yeah. Okay.
So I'd have to go look at previous data and see the trends prior to the pandemic. We had a gap of time, and that would have been when we had applied and academic courses. If I recall, de-stream began in 2020-2021, which would have been, the first year. Yeah, 21-22 was our first year of the EQAO following the release of the math de-streamed. So I think what we need to,
inherent with so many anomalous things, and I know the idea of de-streaming had happened in elementary school, to prepare for. I'm just wondering. I guess we have to wait.
So I think some of the work we're doing at this time, and I have confidence from the work we started last year around the Math Achievement Action Plan and the work we have with our facilitators in supporting our schools with interventions, is helping us to move forward and ensuring that our students are achieving. I can't answer the question with respect to the past data.
It wouldn't maybe show up in the things. Maybe the staff would see it. I'm thinking maybe the staff would see that. Okay, now they can surmise from normal assessments, how kids would be doing in grade 9, whether there was a shift, how they handle it. It's just, you just keep it there. Yeah,
Well,
I
I
think you
think we're-
understand what I'm trying to ask. I'm not sure if I do, but you know what I mean?
So I
I
think
know that there's an expectation and there was apprehension, and so.
So I would like to think that we strive for our educators to be differentiating the instruction in the classroom to meet the needs of all of our students. Based on the changes of DD streaming, we have it in multiple curriculum since 2020-21.
Thank you. Are there any other questions regarding the report? Seeing none, thank you very much for that report. Greatly appreciated. We have no delegations, but we do have 3 on the speakers list. And our first speaker is Selena Hamilton. Just before you come to speak, I will remind you that you have up to 5 minutes to speak and your comments must not violate the Ontario Human Rights Code. I will give you a 1-minute warning when your time is nearly complete, okay?
Good evening, Madam Chair, trustees, administration, all in the gallery and online. My name is Selena Hamilton, and I wish to speak to you tonight regarding Greater Essex County District School Board obligations under the Ontario Human Rights Code and the fundamental freedoms found in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The Ontario Human Rights Code recognizes that each person has a right to equal treatment in the areas of housing, contract, employment, goods and services, facilities, and membership, regardless of age, ancestry, color, race, place of origin, citizenship, creed, disability, marital status, gender identity, sex, and sexual orientation. The Greater Essex County School Board has published policy PAD48 and an accompanying regulation RAD48 reflecting this legislation. The Ontario Human Rights Code is noted in the confirmation email when applying to be a speaker at the public board meeting. It is also cited in a letter I received from the Superintendent of Education to address the deselection process. The stated goal of the policy is to create an environment free of discrimination and harassment. Naturally, we all want peace and equality, but what is discrimination? Does being free from discrimination mean being free from scrutiny? Is it discrimination to offer to someone that they are using poor judgment, they are displaying inappropriate behavior, or they are infringing on the rights of others? Words are interchanged and confounded of meaning so that everyone is on the brink of offense. For example, what is intolerance? Most often, a person offering a contrary opinion, assessment, or complaint is accused of intolerance. But manifested in the real world, how do we see it unfold? If we're not willing to tolerate what someone says, we shut them down. If we're not willing to tolerate what someone does, we remove their access. And if we're not willing to tolerate someone's presence, we remove them. So how has simple disagreement been relabeled intolerance? The Constitution Acts of 1867 and 1982 include the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, of which most people are very aware. Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms state, everyone has the following fundamental freedoms: freedom of conscience and religion, freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression, including freedom of the press and other media of communication, freedom of peaceful assembly, and freedom of association. Freedom of expression is also often referred to as freedom of speech in shorthand, thanks to our American cousins. The ultimate goal of free speech for all parties is that all opinions, perspectives, and worldviews can be presented, considered, and analyzed, endeavoring to rest on the most rational and honorable solution. But free speech is being eroded by those who will not allow their opinion or perspective any scrutiny. They lack the courage of their convictions. Critique is being labeled intolerance, rebuttal is being labeled hate speech, and the pursuit of change is being labeled extremist. The letter I received from the Superintendent of Education ended with, "We appreciate that members of school community are actively engaging with the materials in our schools and school libraries, and all of us can select resources that reflect our diverse opinions, perspectives, and worldviews." Diverse, by definition, means exhibiting a great variety, but the word has been commandeered to mean quite the opposite. Marginalized members of society, which in some cases are 2% of the population, have been given a protected status, while the public majority are silenced, ostracized, labeled, and oppressed. Free speech is not hate speech just because one hates what they're hearing. The Ontario Human Rights Code protects equality and opportunity for all people, not all conjecture, and certainly not within the walls of an institution designed for minors made absent their parents. In closing, my request to this board in this observance of the Ontario Human Rights Code is to revive true tolerance and diversity in the public school system, where a secular creed does not infringe upon the conscience and religion of the students, parents, and staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of clarification regarding the presentation? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation. Our next speaker is Beth St. Dennis. Thank you, and I remind you, you have 5 minutes, and I will give a warning at 1. However, I didn't need to the last time when the speaker said they were closing at the 1-minute mark. So, and that you must not violate the Ontario Human Rights Code in your comments. Thank you very much, and you may start.
Good evening. My name is Beth St. Dennis. I am a concerned citizen, a parent, a godparent, and a lifelong resident of Windsor, Essex. I am here tonight to discuss the importance of the speakers list at school board meetings. The Greater Essex County District School Board is considering a motion tonight to eliminate the speakers list. I feel this is a grave misstep, as well as a failure to recognize the importance of having open dialogue with the public. The speakers list is a chance for the public to address concerns that are not on the meeting's agenda. It gives citizens an opportunity to raise concerns that may be unknown to trustees, as well as address topics that need more public awareness. In order to ensure the public trust, trustees have a responsibility to keep the speakers list intact for public interaction. When you shut down parents and citizens, you erode the public trust and create dissatisfaction in the performance of the board. It is possible to achieve public input and show respect to all parties involved without abolishing the speakers list. Here are a few suggestions. A section can be added to the board's website specifically for the speakers list. It can list guidelines to clarify and clearly define speaker obligations. A frequently asked question list could also be added to the website. This will ensure the public understands what the trustees' expectations are in regards to the speaker. Trustees can also hold in-person ward meetings to discuss issues that the community would like to see addressed. Having consistent communication with the public is essential to fostering trust and respect. There are many reasonable solutions as opposed to eliminating this key tool that citizens should be able to utilize. If the trustees would be more proactive instead of reactive, they could find a way to ensure everyone's needs are met. I would like to read some comments made by some of the trustees at the last board meeting regarding the speakers list. Quote,
Excuse me,
I'm
are
not
you just
going-
quoting? Or
I'm just
no names?
quoting.
Okay,
No
that's
names.
fine, thank you.
I'm done with, quote, I'm done with it. We don't have to do it. Quote, I'm done with not feeling safe. Let's finally say we're done. Quote, I don't think anybody deserves to be treated the way we've been treated. Personally, I think the board deserves to give the public clarification on these statements. When a speaker chooses to make a presentation, they put a lot of time, effort, and research into their speech. The majority of speakers are not looking for conflict. They're looking for the opportunity to address their concerns in a respectful environment and for their voices to be heard. When the microphone gets cut, it is understandable that a speaker would be frustrated. When my mic was cut at the last meeting, I was very displeased. The chair was not willing to let me continue even after I offered to amend my speech to accommodate her concerns. I was in no way threatening, violent, or posed any sort of safety risk. To suggest that the trustees were, quote, unsafe is quite frankly inaccurate and irresponsible. Many citizens have addressed this board and have been treated with contempt. Even with such egregious behavior,
Madam
speakers
Chair, I
would
think this is out
never,
of order because
speakers
we've
would
already
never
been told
tolerate
that
violence
we are
or
speaking-
uttering threats
Point of order,
towards
Madam
the
Chair.
streets.
Excuse me. I'm the chair. I will make the decision. She may continue. She has 1 minute and 30 seconds left.
We've just been said that we treat our speakers with contempt. I would say
You
that
may-
that's out of order.
You may bring a point after the speaker is finished. I'd be happy to entertain it.
Even with such egregious behavior, speakers would never tolerate violence or uttering threats towards the trustees. We would be the first to defend them because we are compassionate citizens who care about our community and love our children. We want to be treated with respect, just as you do. The trustees are going to hear things they may not like or agree with, but as elected officials, they are obligated to listen. At times, trustees have been dismissive and disrespectful. This type of behavior is not going to facilitate public trust. These types of actions will cause the public to be skeptical of the trustees who are supposed to be public servants. Making statements such as, quote, "The trustees' code of conduct has nothing to do with the public,"
You have 20
quote,
seconds left.
"This is our meeting," and, quote, "There is no guarantee of freedom of speech in a private meeting," only exacerbates the problem. These types of remarks should never be spoken by elected officials. However, there is a way to undo some of the damage that these disrespectful comments have caused. All the public wants is the opportunity to address the board to ensure that the interests of our children are being met.
Your
One
time
step
is
in
up.
the, I was interrupted.
you.
I have 3
I
sentences
gave you
left.
extra seconds. It says finish them.
I can finish? I believe that the trustees can come up with a plan and do the job that they were elected to do. Their first priority needs to be listening, communicating, and respecting the voices of parents, students, and citizens of Windsor-Essex. Thank you.
Are there any questions or of clarification or points of info? Go ahead, Trustee Burgess.
My question would be, are you aware that we are not discussing the removal of the speakers list this evening?
No,
Okay.
it's still good for you to hear from the public as to the importance of why there should be a speakers list. There was a motion put forth.
Yeah, for clarification, the motion was brought forward at the last board meeting that would go to our October the 15th meeting. This is an education committee meeting. It's slightly different, even though all the trustees are represented. The motion was made at the prior board meeting, so it will come up at the October board meeting. There was something in the Windsor Star that did make people believe that the decision would be made tonight, and I know I had notified our PR person to notify the Windsor Star that that was a misinformation, that the date of the decision would not be tonight. So I'm not sure if they corrected it. I do believe they did, but not everybody would have necessarily read the correction after the fact, so.
I do appreciate the clarification, and I really hope that my speech will resonate with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Jay Palco on enrollment trends and outlook.
Yes, thank you for your graciousness and your respect. We greatly appreciate that. Oh, clock has started. All right, so yes, good evening, Madam Chair, trustees, administration, all those in the gallery. My name is Jeremy Pelko. I'll be speaking tonight on enrollment trends and outlook. Enrollment is critically important to school boards because it directly affects the ability of a board to operate by having revenue to pay its expenses, not the least of which is teachers and staff, which accounts for about 80% of expenses, as I'm sure you're aware. Expenses that this school board does not want to cut, despite the pressures of a significant deficit of $6.4 million for the 24-25 budget that is set at $532 million. Drilling a bit deeper, the key metric in the provincial funding calculation is called the ADE, Average Daily Enrollment, which is based on two count dates at the end of October and the end of March, weighted at 50-50 for the average. The FAO, or the Financial Accountability Office of Ontario, describes ADE as follows. The primary factor that determines provincial funding to school boards is student enrollment, as measured by school boards' average daily enrollment, or ADE. It's worth knowing that the Ontario government position on school funding has been clarified and strengthened. On Ontario.ca it reads, "We are improving accountability and transparency while focusing the publicly funded education system on boosting student achievement and core academic skills, preparing students for the jobs of the future, and student well-being." And then this goes on into the Education Act as well, and the focus on being reading, writing, and math, which I think all of us in the room would agree on. And we would like to see that happen. School boards have flexibility in how they use funding to make local decisions that support the education outcomes of their students. They also must work within an accountability framework. So going on to the Education Act, the Ontario Regulation 224/23 priorities for the purposes of a subsection 11.2, provincial priorities in education in the area of student achievement. 1, achievement of learning outcomes and core academic skills. 2, preparation of students for future success. And 3, student engagement and well-being. So these are all, on the surface, good priorities. But how they are implemented, the execution of these legal requirements, matters for how they impact kids, parents, and their constituents. To that end, I'll specifically comment on the GECDSB enrollment in recent years and the outlook. So I've got data back to 2007. I won't give you all the numbers. Everybody's going to fall asleep. But we'll give you 2007, 35,416. In 2010, 34,556. And then 2015, basically 35,000. And then it peaks in 2019 at 36,676. Then you get to 2023, and it's at 36,197, which is basically about the 2017-2019 level, and it's about 1.3% over 2022. But Windsor-Essex population continues to grow rapidly, even exploding in the past couple of years. So in Essex County, in 2011 census was 389,000, 2016, 390,000. In 2022, though, 2021, I should say, we're at 423,000. So it's gone up 8.8% versus 11, 6% versus 16. But in 2022 and 2023, it's up 7.3%, 12 times as fast, record level, called an explosion of population. Some might say reckless, but that's what's happening. But the GECDSB enrollment is clearly not tracking with the trend. And so in a CBC article, it reads, in May, staff warned trustees the deficit of the 23-24 school year was nearly $9 million, citing declining enrollment as well as inflationary pressures are among the reasons for the deficit. Now, Ontario independent schools, worth commenting on, are growing. So there's a few schools, I don't know if you mind me mentioning them. If you don't want me to, that's fine. What's that?
You have 1 minute,
That's
so
fine.
I would not
Okay,
waste
well,
my
there's a
time
couple
on-
Christian schools. They're growing, they're hiring, they're adding tech wings, and we'll just leave it at that. But it's a growing concern here because the double-mindedness of our government and how they're trying to politicize our school system is a problem, and that's why people are removing. So you have to objectively consider all of what you can do better. Canceling the speakers list won't help. More DEI and censuses won't help. Promoting CRT is a dead end. Pushing pride is counterproductive. And alienating people of faith clearly hasn't helped.
Point of order, those are all protected grounds under the Ontario Human Rights Code, and he should not be speaking about the pride, or he should not be speaking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, Madam Chair.
Hopefully, Trustee Leclerc did not steal all my time.
No, you have 30 seconds.
But he took
Finish.
30 of it.
Point of order. Point of order.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I'm challenging
Yes.
your ruling. You are
Go
not
ahead.
permitted to allow a speaker
I didn't
to speak
actually
about
hear
issues.
anything contrary, but
He indicated that our board should not be involved in DEI or pride.
Can I finish?
So those are in direct contravention of the Ontario Human Rights Code. They are
No,
also
it's not.
issues that are mandated by the by the province of Ontario and the Ministry of Education. Madam Chair, you have to rule him out of order.
Well, I'm done with that section anyways. Can we move on?
No, we can't.
No.
Well, I know you don't want me to, but Madam Chair, if you don't mind,
Madam
can I
Chair,
Madam
finish?
Chair, I'm challenging.
I've got 3 sentences
Make
left.
a decision.
I've got 3 sentences. That worked last time.
I've been challenged, so therefore I will let the vice chair take care of the challenge, since it's me that's being challenged.
I hope I get this right. There's a challenge to the chair, and we are to determine whether or not the speaker is out of order. The speaker who has given the chair is, yeah. So the person who has brought the challenge forward has given the reasons for the order. Will the ruling of the chair be sustained? All those in favor of the ruling of the chair, which is the speaker may finish the 30 seconds he's got, can that be sustained? All those in favor of sustaining the rule of the chair? All those opposed to the ruling of the chair? And that is carried. Thank you for speaking. I will give you the chair back.
Nope. He's up.
Point of order. Chair, please have him removed.
The speaker's list is complete. You've made a decision. We're moving on to the next item on our schedule. That is, well, if it's terrible, then when we have organization, you can do something about it. Okay. Our next item is new business. Is there any new business before us? Seeing none, we have reports that were in our packages that you've had opportunity to read. Do you have any questions regarding these reports? No questions regarding any of the reports that are in our package? Seeing none, we'll move to trustee question period. Do we have any questions of this committee? Seeing none, do we have any notices of motion? Seeing none, do we have any announcements? Trustee Leclerc.
I wanted to share an experience that I had with the trustees as part of my personal journey for truth and reconciliation. I participated in a virtual tour of the residential school that is most closely associated to Southwestern Ontario, which is the Mohawk Institute Residential School in Brantford, Ontario. For those that are interested, the Woodland Cultural Center provides a virtual tour, which I participated in. I recommend if you're interested in participating in it, it's easy to do online. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements? Trustee Buckler?
October 10th is the grand opening for Beacon Heights, a new elementary school in Lakeshore. I'm quite excited about it and hope that my colleagues join me in attending and then ushering in this new school.
Thank you. Any other announcements? I would just like to highlight, I think, do we have it up behind us or no? The October Days of Acknowledgement. There's several. I won't read them all off, but as I'm getting older, I'm beginning to appreciate October 1st today as being National Seniors Day. I'm not far off, so. There's also October 10th, World Mental Health Day. October 11th, International Day of the Girl Child. There are also on October the 11th, National Coming Out Day, International Pronouns Day on the 16th. The 18th is Persons Day, Dress Purple Day. As you can see, there are a lot of various acknowledgements in the month of October, so I hope you take the moment to take a look at those and think about them this month. Thank you very much. And I will now, with all the announcements being done, adjourn this meeting and we will convene into Ops and Finance in just a couple of moments. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting of the Operations and Finance Committee to order. Attendance is the same as the Education Committee. Looking for approval of the agenda. Trustee Buckler, seconded by Trustee Sipcar. All in support? It's approved. Is there any declaration of conflict of interest? Seeing none. We have 2 minutes for approval. We have the minutes of June 4th and minutes of June 18th. Can we move those together? Trustee Burgess, seconded by Trustee Buckler. All in support? Both are approved. Any business arising? Trustee Armstrong?
I have a question about the minutes as it is today. So is this an appropriate time to ask that?
No, we just passed the minutes. Was there an issue related to the minutes?
Well, just, I understand our enrollment has gone up, correct? Is that correct, what I heard last meeting, that our enrollment has gone up?
Okay, well, I don't know that. Yeah, that would have been at a regular board meeting. However, we do have trustee question period.
Okay.
You might want to ask that question of administration when we get to that point, if that works. Any business arising? None. We have no presentations. There are no delegations. No one on the speakers list. There's no new business. I have K1, K2, K3, and K4, which are all reports to be received. There are no presentations related to those reports to be received. If there's any questions on K1. Trustee Hatfield.
Thanks. Just a quick question. I wanted to know if the phone system in the admin building, is that operating or capital? And I didn't remember if that was included in the capital budget, if it's capital. I just wasn't sure.
Thank you. You know what? To be truthful, I'm going to have to check for you on that.
I didn't look at it early enough to give you a heads up on that one, so I apologize, but it was just a question I had on that.
Any other questions on K1? Moving to K2. Questions on K2? Questions on K3? Interim financial expense report as of May 31st. Trustee Sipcar.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So this is as of the end of May, correct? It's not August. August comes in November.
August comes in November.
Yeah, or January. Okay. It's showing deficit for compliance purposes. I guess I'll just ask my question instead of getting too far in the weeds. Are we on track are we projecting the same budget that we had approved last year, from last year? Yeah.
Thank you, through Madam Chair. We're still working through the year-end process, but at this point, yes, we are anticipating a budget deficit approximating the $8.9 million.
Okay, before I move on, I just want to make a statement that I'm not sure if August comes in November, December, or January, but I always thought it came in August. But anyway.
I meant the year-end report.
I know, but I couldn't help it. We need a little levity at some point, don't we? Okay, questions for K4. Questions for K4, which is the policy on borrowing and investing funds. I know it's standard, it's housekeeping, but Trustee Hatfield has a question.
Well, not really, just I noted that we really didn't have any money to invest and that we actually had to borrow to keep our cash flow going, especially because of the big payouts that we had. And back to K3, just I also noticed the one little line in there that we're expected to be on track for that deficit of 1 to 2%. So, yeah, it's all a sad story, but that's the way it is.
Right, and thank you. If I can just add to that, I just want to highlight, we typically never bring forward a report where we're telling you that we've borrowed money. But when we got to, July, we utilized the cash. We utilized $30 million that we have available for overdraft, and we had to borrow $20 million that's repayable
on Wednesday, Thursday. So that is an issue. Now, part of it is because we had to make the Bill 124 payments and the collective agreement payments, and there's timing with ministry flow, cash flow. But at the same time, we're spending more than we're receiving from ministry. So it's we're outlaying more cash. So that's an important factor. And that's in this report that you would not typically see. We've never borrowed money before like that.
Trustee Burgess.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I know when we did the budget, I'm pretty sure when we did the budget, you mentioned this, or at some time you mentioned this, but it's about the utilities, the natural gas volume and the hydro electricity. And our practice has been in the past, price hedging agreements, et cetera, and there were risks involved both ways, and you kind of take a bet whether you should go for a daily spot rate or so I'm wondering, is there any update on that? Like we've taken a different risk, and are there any regrets, or is it working out, or how do we feel?
Thank you. I keep saying Madam Chair. I think I've said it like 10 times already. Through Mr. Chair. No regrets in terms of that practice. I think what's helpful now is that we are replacing our older buildings now with more energy efficient schools, which is now having a little bit more of a positive impact in terms of our energy. But no, in terms of the arrangement that we have right now, we would continue on with that.
Trustee Sipkar.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious on the $20 million loan. Do you foresee us having to do that again this year, or is it a concern for you at this time?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We continue to monitor cash flow. We do it on a monthly basis. We may need to, again, in the short term until some of our capital funding comes through after we finalize and file our year-end financial statements. Then we get the flow of a good chunk from all the building that we've been doing in capital expenses over the past summer. We may need to bridge that. But if we can get the budget in check, then and not be spending more than what we're receiving in our transfer payments, then we should have enough with our regular overdraft to manage our cash flows.
Sure. And as a supplemental to that, like seeing the interest rate, the 4.79 plus 1.05, do we forecast that in our budget? Where does that interest on that $20 million loan come from?
Fortunately, that interest is funded.
It's okay. I mean, there's good news sometimes, once in a while. And like I said before, spending 30 years in policing, I've been called worse than Madam Chair. It's okay. I'm moving on to question period, and I have Trustee Armstrong.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. On page 4, it was talking about the declining enrollment grant, but did I misunderstand? I thought I heard at the last meeting that our enrollment was going up. Did I mishear something? So what happens then with the declining roll? Sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So preliminarily, when we do our original budget in the spring, we take the enrollment as it's known at that time, which is not inclusive of all final registrations that we then realize once we hit September and we do our recount. At the time we projected enrollment back in the spring, we compared it to our actual enrollment for the year that we were in to determine if the enrollment was decreasing at that time, which it was, which generated money funding under the declining enrollment grant. Now, when we go and we revise that enrollment for the October 31st count, it looks like elementary enrollment's up between 4 and 500, I believe, is the number we're working with right now, which then we will compare that back to last year's enrollment, which will help us from a funding standpoint and generate more funding, but then it will reduce the amount of our declining enrollment grant.
Wrong button. Are there any other trustee questions? Trustee Burgess, go ahead.
Well, it might be redundant, but my question was about enrollment because we will be getting an enrollment report, et cetera. But at the first glance, I just heard for the first time that from our predictions, we're up 500 more in elementary than we predicted. And so I just want that confirmed. And is there anything in secondary? And 500 people that we're not expecting to show up, that's a whole school, you know? So I'm wondering how that affected the system.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, we're comparing to what we originally budgeted. So when we run the preliminary enrollment reports, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing between 400 and 500. We're still trying to finalize that number. So staffing has been adjusted according to those enrollments based on where those enrollments came in throughout the system. A majority of that enrollment always happens in the FDK because we have late registrations that flow in. So we see JK, SK classrooms increase, which results in more classes and more ECs. And usually the extra funding is that's what is used to pay for the staffing of those classes, those new classes. As far as secondary, though, what we typically see in secondary is our original projections are pretty good, right on. So we're just waiting to finalize that in October.
So supplemental, because I was asking like the impact. We had various trends over the last forever, you know, where we'd have a day in the life, we'd have to, you know, we'd try to have kindergarten registrations in the spring. This is our push, et cetera. But more and more and more, it's been later and later and later, and sometimes very last minute registrations for full-time kindergarten. Can we say that's a solid trend, and can we make any, are we looking at any kind of adjusting in staffing, or will we continue to wait for that late staffing for those late registrations? And is there any strategy to try to encourage the earlier registrations again?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we don't staff for kids that we don't know are coming. So our process is with all the unions, what we do is we I believe we have a staffing program that determines the classroom structures based on the current enrollment. So that's why we have the revised estimates opportunity to increase that enrollment and adjust the classes at that time in the staffing.
And just to add to that, the ministry was very clear when we were doing the budget to be very conservative, particularly when you were doing enrollment projections related to JK and SK students, because they are seeing provincially overall that enrollment is declining across the system in that age range or that grouping of students. And so we always are conservative to basically reflect the budget on who we know is already registered, and that's it. So yes, there'll be some adjustments, but at the same time, I got to caution that the declining enrollment grant now is going to get chewed away, and we are going to be adding staffing costs. So does it contribute positively to the bottom line? Probably not. But we'll know better once we're working on our revised estimates right after year end.
Okay, thank you. I have one, and see who can answer this. If population is increasing by 7%, in our Essex County, Windsor-Essex County, is there any assumption that could be made on that 7% as how many of those would be students? Like, is there an actuarial number that you could make some kind of guess?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, we do have some software that shows, but we have what we call push-pull reports. And it looks at all the different areas and shows the birth rates, and then it projects from past experiences what percent we would hopefully get for each particular area.
Okay, just as a follow-up to that, again, using that 7% number that we heard earlier, is there any specific demographic that we know is coming to this area that might not contribute to the feeding schools?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, the retirees.
Thank you.
I was just going to add, that's the kind of stuff that Watson does for us. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, any other questions? All right, notices of motion. Any notices of motion? No notices of motion. Announcements? Are there any announcements? I have two. Kim did not steal them tonight. October 21st through 25th is School Bus Safety Week. We encourage everybody to ride the bus and ride it safely. October 23rd is School Bus Driver Appreciation Day. We're all well aware of the challenges it is to find bus drivers across the province, not just in our area, particularly after the pandemic. So if you're riding a bus, say thank you to your driver on October 23rd. Any other announcements? No? We are adjourned into public session.
We're back to the public session on your blue paper. Item E, do we have any declarations of conflict of interest for the rest of this agenda? No, seeing none. Approval of the minutes from June 4th. Sorry.
Item F, actions of the board meeting private session. There are items.
Right, sorry about that. Item F, actions of the board meeting in private session. I'll turn it over to Trustee Cook.
All right, I got those for you. Gonna do F1 and F2, which is personal together. Trustee Leclerc and Trustee Sipcar, all in favor? All support. Awesome. F3, which is safety and security. A mover, Trustee Hatfield, Trustee Leclerc, all in favor? That passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I can do the minutes from June 4th. All those in, oh, I need a motion. Trustee Sipcar, Trustee Burgess, all those in support. Anyone opposed? No, that carries. Thank you. Any business arising from those minutes that are attached? Seeing none. I don't think there were any action items from education or finance. No. Any notices of motion for this meeting? Seeing none. Oh, then we've reached the end of our approved agenda, so I can declare the public meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.